Okay, welcome to the Religion and Medicine revision. This is a fascinating topic, incredibly up to date. You'll very, very regularly see news stories all about what I'm about to talk about. We talk about abortion, we talk about euthanasia, we talk a little bit about IVF, and we also talk a little bit about general medical ethics. And medical ethics is a crucial key term in this topic. Medical ethics is basically the discussion of what is right and what is wrong in medicine. It's so important because technology is changing. Abortion was not an issue when the Bible and the Quran was written. Not an issue at all because people didn't do it. It's been the advent of modern medicine that has made it important. Similarly, advances such as IVF and even the methods of euthanasia change the way we view human beings, and also this idea of sanctity of life, that life is sacred. Free will, the idea that you've got freedom to do and choose your own actions. Conscience is the voice inside your head, your moral compass, some people refer to it as. Quality of life, the extent to which life is worth living. You can have a poor quality of life if you're very ill. And the Hippocratic Oath, we'll come to the Hippocratic Oath in a second. Okay, sanctity of life. Well, obviously religious people believe in this. It's a religious idea, the idea that life is sacred and particularly important for Christians. It's a God-given gift, and so therefore we should respect it. There's a lovely quotation here. Your body is a temple of the Holy Spirit. Think about the way religious people treat their temples. They treat them with a great deal of respect. They make them look beautiful. They make them reflect the glory of God. We should do the same with our bodies. For Muslims, every soul has been created by Allah. That's every single human being created by him, therefore should be respected. And Allah also has a plan for each life. That's something that links to the suffering part of religion and conflict. He has a plan for each and every one of our lives. Therefore it's important. And finally, this is a very similar idea: no one dies unless God wills it. So God, or Allah, is the master over life and death. The Hippocratic Oath. Well, the Hippocratic Oath is an oath or a promise that doctors make, which basically expresses their medical ethics, what they believe about medicine. Doctors, and to sum it up here, I've made it very, very brief into 3 bullet points, but you can look it up online. They need to care for their patients, they need to respect their dignity, and they need to be honest and open. The reason is because medicine is so complicated. So doctors have to have it defined as to what they believe and what they do. Abortion. This is our first main big issue. Obviously something which is hugely controversial around the world, especially in countries like America. Less so in this country. But even so, I live next to, just down the road from an abortion clinic, and every single Saturday there are a number of religious people picketing the clinic, showing that it's still an issue in this country. This is a rather distasteful image, is exactly how a late-term abortion is done. The fetus will be sucked out through this vacuum cleaner, almost, and that's the way that the fetus is actually removed from the womb. Earlier term abortions can be done with pills. Got to think about these 4 things: choices and rights of the mother, rights of the child who's not yet born, the choice about making decisions in accordance with your conscience, that key word, and the religious beliefs of those involved. Those are the big contentious issues. So what do religious people say? Let's start with Catholics. Well, Catholics are against abortion, and very much so. The Pope has reasserted numerous times that he believes abortion to be evil, to be murder, and the reason why is because life begins at fertilization. When the sperm goes into the egg and forms that unique set of DNA, life has begun. And therefore you've got an inviolable right of every innocent being to life. Inviolable means you cannot violate it, you cannot destroy it, you cannot abuse it. And finally, this lovely quote here from Psalm: children are a gift from the Lord, they are a blessing. And therefore, if it's a child, once it's fertilized, we should treat it as a blessing. Liberal Protestants, and generally only liberal Protestants, conservative Protestants would not agree with abortion. Liberal Protestants, such as this very liberal-looking man here, they would argue that actually it can be the lesser of 2 evils. They still think it's evil. They still don't think it's a great thing to do, but that actually it might be the less evil thing to have the abortion rather than to force a woman to have a pregnancy. If the pregnancy, for example, threatens the life of the mother, then it would be less evil to have an abortion than to kill the mother and the child, or the prospective child. It should be done as early as possible, though. For Muslims, they believe in sanctity of life. Again, Allah determines our end. That's the argument linking above. This is the key one. You shall not kill your child for fear of want. For Muslims, you cannot have an abortion if you are worried about not having enough money and being able to take care of them. That's not acceptable in Islam. Fear of want means that, fear of wanting for the material goods to look after your child. Ensoulment, for Muslims, this is actually an argument for abortion. These two are against, these two are for. Ensoulment means that the soul goes into the fetus at 120 days, 17 weeks. Therefore, some Muslims argue that abortion is acceptable up until then. They also argue that it's acceptable if there's a risk to the mother. On to euthanasia. Now, euthanasia, again, an incredibly current issue. It's all over the news. We had Tony Nicholson's case that we were looking through in class, which was actually happening as we were studying this. Two different kinds of euthanasia in this country. You've got voluntary euthanasia, when a person has asked someone to help them die. That is illegal. You cannot, in this country, ask someone to help you to die. It's murder. However, legal is non-voluntary euthanasia. And that may sound more negative, but this is the legal one, non-voluntary. And this is the person who dies is not able to make the decision, such as turning off a life support machine. And Christians and Muslims say no to euthanasia generally, because taking life is wrong, because it is a gift from God or Allah. Suffering has a purpose in God's or Allah's plan. If you just think about Jesus' experience of suffering, he went through great, horrible suffering, and we can see that suffering actually has a purpose. And also in Islam, suffering is a test for all religious people that Allah sets us. So therefore we should respect that test and not try and end it too early. And finally, alternatives are offered by hospices. Hospices are obviously places for people to go when they are terminally ill, when they are about to die, and they are given care. Palliative care, we call it. You can check the spelling in the section afterwards. Palliative care to try and ease their passing. However, there are some Christians that argue that the most loving act is to end the pain. Jesus was a loving, kind and caring figure, and to force people to go through pain is not loving, so therefore we should allow them to end their pain. Okay, moving towards the final sections here. We've got IVF, in vitro fertilization, literally from the Latin in vitro, in glass. And this is what you may know as test tube babies. Simple explanation of how it works. Well, you will take an egg from a woman's ovaries, and you will put it into a test tube with a man's sperm, egg, test tube, fertilize those together to form an embryo, and the embryo goes back into the uterus to grow to be a lovely human being. Okay, this is quite an expensive procedure. It costs about 4 to 8 grand in England. There is NHS treatment of this. That means that you do not have to pay. It's paid for by the taxpayer. And that can only happen if the mother is between 23 and 39, and if there's an established fertility problem. Fertility means when you cannot have kids. Some people argue that we shouldn't be paying for people to have this because it's something they should have to pay for themselves. So what do religions say about it? Well, Christians argue that God has a plan, and if his plan is for you to not have children, then you should accept that. And some other Christians might argue that if you had a donor sperm or a donor egg, so not from the wife or the husband, that would be adultery. For quite obvious reasons. If you had the wife has to take donor sperm from a sperm bank because the husband has a low sperm count, then she would be cheating on her husband with that sperm. Strange idea, but that's what some Christians argue. Spare embryos are destroyed in this process. It doesn't always work, and therefore sometimes the embryo here has to be thrown away. Now, if you're a Catholic, remember, you believe that life begins at fertilization. So to throw away that embryo is murder. However, there are some positives for Christians. Some argue that we have God-given science. God gave us science in order to try and understand the world. We should respect that, and we should try and improve our lot in life. You've also, in the Bible, got quite a lot of references to God giving fertility to people as a reward. You've got Elizabeth, who was the mother of John the Baptist, eventually, who was given fertility by the Lord despite being barren or infertile. Muslims, they are generally pro-IVF unless, again, you've got this donor sperm because of the adultery argument. And ensoulment, the idea that the soul doesn't enter into the embryo until 120 days, 17 weeks, means that wastage of the embryo that doesn't work is not an issue. So generally, Muslims are pro-IVF. Christians are divided. Okay, finally, we have to look at general issues, and they might ask you general questions about medical ethics. And these are some of the general issues. Abortion, euthanasia, and IVF are the things we've looked at. However, there are a number of different areas which cause controversy. You've got new medicines. You've got the idea of herbal medicines, of alternative medicines. Do they work? Is it moral to give those to patients? Should we really encourage things which aren't scientific? Should we allow people the free will to make up their own mind, to use their own conscience? You've got transplants. Is it okay to transplant one body part from somebody to another? What about if you have to have a child in order to transplant something from that new child to one of your current children? Is that morally okay to use them as a kind of donor baby? This is the crucial one that we've spoken about in class quite a lot. This is the one that I think is going to be the biggest issue over the next 10 to 20 years. It won't be long before we can understand the DNA of human beings so much that we will be able to change our babies. To be able to say to a woman and a man, or just the woman potentially, that you could have a baby with blonde hair who is good at sport and particularly intelligent or musically talented. It's not impossible, it will happen eventually. Is that morally okay? Some people would argue, no, it's not. God has a plan for us and we should not be messing around with those plans. Other people would argue again, we've got this science, why not try and make our lives better? Obviously an atheist might argue that our point on this planet is to try and understand and improve ourselves, and so therefore what we should really try and do is to make ourselves as good as possible. Okay, that is religion and medicine.